Happy Monday. It is noon. You are watching CBC News BC and CBC Television. I'm Leanne Young here on the CBC Vancouver newsroom. Let's get to your top stories right now. Well, a large rally is underway on the streets of Victoria as we speak. Thousands of striking BCGEU workers and their supporters are marching to the lawn of the BC Legislature. The union is in its 6th week of escalating job action. It is pushing for a 4% per year general wage increase, saying the government's latest offer wasn't good enough. The rally coincides with the first day of the fall legislative session. And 3 men have been charged in connection to an extortion-related shooting targeting the South Asian community. 20-year-old Nirmandeep Chima, 23-year-old Mandeep Gidda, and 26-year-old Arundeep Singh have all been charged with reckless discharge of a firearm. The shooting happened at a home on 89th A Avenue near 132nd Street back in March. No one was injured. Police say they were able to track down the suspects through physical and digital evidence.
It just goes to highlight when, usually post-event, after an incident happens and we appeal to the public for information to come forward, whether in some cases that's dash cam or CCTV footage, that actually does have results for our investigators.
Meanwhile, Surrey officers are also at the site of a business this morning after an overnight shooting. It happened around 2:30 in the morning on King George Boulevard near 20th Avenue. No one was at the business at the time, so no injuries. Police say the incident may be related to other ongoing extortion cases. And a CBC News investigation has found a big jump in overtime pay to Vancouver police officers. Documents from a Freedom of Information request show payments going up from $26 million in 2022 to $39 million last year. 47 VPD officers were paid $100,000 or more in overtime hours in just a year, with one officer banking $240,000. It's raising questions about lack of oversight and police wellness.
It worries me for them. I go, well, are you burning your members out? Are there health and wellness issues? Are they even aware of it? So that's one concern I would have. From a public perspective, from a municipal perspective, from a public perspective, from a police board perspective, governance perspective, it's unsustainable. These numbers are unsustainable. They're massive jumps.
The VPD points to lower violent crime rates and says it is mindful about managing officer overwork. And for the 4th time this year in Delta, Fraser Health says it has had to close the hospital's ER overnight because of a doctor shortage. In response, the city's mayor says he's introducing a motion to City Council today that will look at opening city-run urgent primary care centres to try and help and alleviate some of the pressure on the ER.
More doctors that I talked to just recently, they think having an urgent and primary care centre operated by the city would really attract a lot more professionals. Benefits, holidays, quality of life. So it's something I hope that we have a chance to look at.
Fraser Health says it works hard to fill shifts before issuing a temporary service interruption. The health minister insists the province is also working to address the shortage, including recruiting healthcare workers from other countries and expediting the credential recognition process. That's it for me for now. I'm Leanne Young. A happy Mid-Autumn Festival. To those of you who are celebrating, stay here. Don't go anywhere. BC Today with Michelle Elliott is next. Thanks for watching.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. The BC Legislature is back, this time with 4 parties and 2 independents. There's labor unrest, a record deficit, a proposed new pipeline from Alberta to BC's coast, and of course the ongoing U.S. trade war, all while the parties face their own challenges. These are busy times, potentially rocky waters ahead. So can the parties navigate their way through? What do they need to get done? We have a panel of former MLAs and a political strategist up first, and we'll take your calls. I'm Michelle Elliott. Welcome to BC Today. And you can call us now. The BC Legislature is back with some big issues and each of the parties facing their own challenges. So can they navigate this session, and what do you think they need to get done? Our numbers are 604-669-3733, 1-800-825-5950, or just hit pound 690 on your cell phone. You can send us an email, bctoday@cbc.ca, or put a comment on our TikTok Live. We are live on TikTok right now. Thanks for joining us there. I have 4 guests joining me this half hour. Katrina Chen is a former BC NDP MLA for Burnaby-Lougheed. Sonia Furstenau is a former BC Green Party leader. Mike Bernier is a former BC United MLA for Peace River South. He ran as an independent in the last provincial election. Allie Blades is a BC Conservative political strategist. Hello and welcome to all of you. I think we're still trying to connect with some of our guests here. Let me see if I can connect with one of our guests first. Katrina Chen, are you there? Okay, we're still trying to connect with Katrina Chen. Hi, Katrina, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hi.
Can you hear me, please?
I sure can. Thank you very much. My apologies for the technical issues we seem to be having right now.
No problem.
Welcome to all of you. If you're listening, very good to have you for this conversation. There is a lot going on. I mean, right now, there's this rally right outside the BC Legislature that's being held by public sector unions. So I'm wondering, Katrina, let me start with you, right? The BCGEU strike, now the longest public service strike in BC history. What kind of position do you think the NDP is in right now, given the deficit that it's struggling with and trying to cut costs, but also now that we're starting to see the impacts of this BCGEU strike?
Well, I think the government definitely talks a lot about supporting the economy, and it's important to remember that people are our economy. When people don't have to leave paycheck to paycheck, I understand a lot of the public service workers, about 50% of them are leaving paycheck to paycheck. When they can make the ends meet and being able to, shop locally, spend their money locally, and contribute to the local economy, then that's good for our economy. So I definitely hope that the government will enter really good negotiations and being able to resolve this challenge, especially when so many of the frontline workers who are processing our benefit applications, caring for people who are vulnerable, and fighting wildfires, they definitely deserve to be able to live and have a good job and a good life in BC. And
is the NDP going to struggle with ongoing criticism about its handling of BC's finances? That, this is a longstanding criticism of the party. So given this record deficit, is that going to be kind of a thorn in its side this session?
Well, I definitely think that I saw the press release from the BC government this morning. There is definitely a lot of focus on how they are looking at opportunities. For example, I'm really excited to hear more about intra-provincial trade, figuring out other trade opportunities and supporting really good jobs. So I think this is a session that we're going to hear from the government, the MLAs, about the work that they've done over the past many months and see if there are new solutions. It is a very challenging time for the whole world, not just Canada, not just BC. But at the end of the day, it's important to support people as well.
My guests, again, Katrina Chen, former BC NDP MLA for Burnaby-Lougheed. You just heard her there. As well, Allie Blades is a BC Conservative political strategist. We're also joined by Sonia Furstenau, the former BC Green Party leader, and Mike Bernier, former BC United MLA for Peace River South. Let me go to Allie Blades now. And, Katrina mentioned a lot has been happening over the last few weeks. It has been a busy summer. The BC Conservatives were certainly busy. A lot of news around the party itself, right? 4 fewer MLAs now. 2 have formed this new party, 1 BC, 2 independents, now 1 Eleanor Sturco. I mean, how are caucus members feeling? Are they still confident in their party and their leader?
Well, it certainly feels like a first day back at school after a busy summer. And it was a busy summer for all political parties. When we take a look at the NDP and how they're responding to the union strike, and while they're trying to paint a picture that they, of course, care for British Columbians, meanwhile balancing a narrative of a growing deficit and record 11.6 billion, if I'm not mistaken. Meanwhile, the Conservatives, we certainly have been in the headlines quite a bit over the past couple of months. But what I'll say here is that John Rustad spent a summer-long campaign-style tour of the province, in part with his leadership review. He visited most regions for an in-person vote that happened. What this means is that he was engaging with members, engaging with stakeholders, and doing those hard hat tours that we love to see online. But most critically, what he was also doing is figuring out from each corner of this province what British Columbians want to see in an opposition party and what they want to see with their government and holding them accountable. Now, if we rewind, the BC United kind of had this problem. Where did they stand for things? What do they believe? What's the party position? That's where John Rustad is right now. He's trying to figure out where the party stands on these critical issues, identifying what's going to be part of his election platform when the time comes. But in the wrap up of a summer tour, that's the best position to be in. There's a lot of work certainly to do ahead. There's a lot of narratives being created right now on caucus divide. What I'll say to that is that it's challenging managing a coalition of thoughts, a coalition of people on a wide spectrum of political beliefs. But now is the time for him to really come in this session, particularly with message discipline, while also being somewhat open to figuring out what the party identity is so that they can move forward stronger.
Well, you mentioned BC United. Let me just put the numbers out once again, asking our audience to weigh in. And what are your thoughts on the political landscape right now here in BC? You just heard Allie Blades. They're talking about what the Conservatives or what BC Conservative Party leader John Rustad is going to be tasked with in terms of that party's identity right now. And you heard from Katrina Chen, the former BC NDP MLA, talking about the challenge of faced by the NDP as it faces this huge public sector strike. We're going to check in on that rally, in fact, in about 20 minutes from now. So let us know what you think of the political landscape as the legislature comes back. What are the biggest challenges, do you think, for these parties? And what do you think they need to get done? A lot of news has been happening that the provincial government will be dealing with, right? We have the tariffs, of course, from the United States, a pipeline proposal from Alberta, and of course, the ongoing trade war, again, with the United States, and this deficit, as I mentioned, that BC is now dealing with. So what do you think the government needs to actually tackle? What are your hopes for this session? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, or just hit pound 690 on your cell phone. Our email is bctoday@cbc.ca. Okay, well, Mike Bernier was an MLA under BC United. What's going through your mind then? You decided to run as an independent in the last election rather than run with the BC Conservatives after BC United folded its campaign. So what do you make of what's been happening with the Conservatives?
Well, I think all the main parties, the NDP and the Conservatives, are both struggling a little bit with identity crisis right now, really trying to master the message of what's going to hit home for people in British Columbia. I think the Conservatives are really the ones that are behind the 8 ball right now with trying to deal with getting their own house in order. As Ali said, it's a lot of work. There's a lot of issues when you're an opposition, when you're trying to keep government accountable on things, and there's a lot of challenges right now that government has. So there's, I guess, a big basket that the NDP is trying to juggle around right now, and the Conservatives have a lot of opportunities. The challenge that I see right now as an outsider, and of course I was in in cabinet back in the days with John Rustad, so I know him quite well personally. And I think he's struggling with, as you're saying, with the different identities, the different values and opinions that he has with such a broad conservative caucus that has been formed. Basically, I hate to say overnight, but people remember the last election, which is already close to a year ago, where the Conservatives were a non-entity for many elections, and now all of a sudden have to try to figure out how to put all those ideas together, as Allie said.
Yeah. What was that the challenge for BC United?
I think for BC United it was a little bit different, only because being an outsider now, it's interesting. I can think back on those days. I think the biggest challenge for the BC United was they were still trying to govern rather than be in opposition, because so many of the BC United MLAs, myself included, were former cabinet ministers, former government members who knew the ins and outs of governing. And then to try to take that hat off and hold government accountable, I think that was one of the biggest challenges that the BC United had, which made it difficult to have our own identity. And for Kevin Falcon to come in and as the new leader and then change the party name, I think everybody will say now in hindsight that was the wrong thing to do, but here we are now today.
Have you heard from Kevin Falcon?
No.
Okay.
No, and in fact, I don't think many people have in the last year, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Before I go to our caller here, Sonia Furstenau, former MLA for Couch and Valley and former leader of the BC Green Party. We're hearing about identity crises for each of the parties. I'm wondering what you think of the BC Greens and what that means for them right now. Here we have climate activist Emily Lowen, who's been elected overwhelmingly by the BC Greens. She's not a sitting MLA. At the same time, most of the discussion is about how to fight economically, right? How to make Canada this economic superpower in the face of this trade war from the United States. So can the Greens still continue its message of climate activism in the face of that environment?
Yeah, thanks so much, and really happy to be here. I think if you ignore the risks and impacts, especially the economic impacts of climate change, you can't expect to have an economy that's thriving or that's able to really serve the needs of people. And I think, coming into the session this fall, the MLAs have all had an opportunity to spend time in their communities. They come back to the legislature bringing the concerns and visions and challenges of their constituents. And we should see the legislature as a forum for that really important discussion to be taking place about how to best serve the government and the opposition parties, how to best serve the needs of the people of BC, the cost of living crisis, the healthcare issues that people are facing, and the environmental and climate issues, which both impact health, public health, with things like wildfire smoke and drought and mental health, and really do impact the cost of living. We look at how much climate events cost the economy, tens of billions in 2021, and any government ignoring that is really ignoring such an important part of their duty and responsibility. So I'm hoping to see from all of the parties, frankly, some sense of a vision that goes beyond looking backwards at us being a resource-based economy and really recognizing, as Katrina Chen said, we have to invest in people. We have to make sure that people are getting the services they expect from government. And we have to have a vision for an economy that really moves us to a much more long-term sustainable and stable place.
That's Sonia Furstenau, former BC Green Party leader and former MLA for Couch and Valley. And we are also joined by Katrina Chen, who is former BC NDP MLA, and Mike Bernier, former BC United MLA. And I think we might have lost our connection with Allie Blades, who is a BC Conservative Party strategist, hoping to reconnect with her. But I will, the next topic I'd like to broach with my panel is about this pipeline proposal from Alberta. So I'm going to go to that in a moment here. But let me go to some callers now first as well. Gabriel is on the line in Victoria. Yeah, what are your thoughts on what the parties are facing right now and what the job is in front of them as they go back to the legislature, Gabriel?
Well, I think the Conservatives are in a bad fix because, like on the federal level, they're facing ostensibly Liberal governments that have eaten their lunch, breakfast, and dinner. You're seeing these governments and their oppositions, they're using the threat of Trump as cover to move a government policy even further to the right. All this chat about the deficit and the financial situation ignores the fact of how it actually happened. How it happens is all the corporate welfare that's being dished out and the laughably low taxation on the rich. We could have balanced budgets every year if we tax the rich and if we jettison corporate welfare, and we could expand public services at the same time. So we don't have any party that's going to champion the working majority. All this talk about the economy makes it as if everyone's affected by the economy in the same way. But study after study shows that is not the case. Working people have lost ground every year, while the rich get ever richer and obscenely so. And then meanwhile, we've got an NDP government, a supposed Labour government, that's telling unions to eat effective wage cuts, to take wage settlements that are well below inflation. And we're not even talking about even the nurses, for example, where they're not only telling them to eat a large de facto wage cut, but they're trying to pull wrench concessions out of them as well, stripping away overtime from them, which is, of course, because the government won't provide proper staffing levels.
So not a lot of
we don't have a party that's championing what needs to be done here, public services and well-being of the working majority.
We're going to check in on that public sector union rally that's taking place in a few moments. Gabriel, thank you very much for your call from Victoria. Let me go back to my panel now and touch on the proposal from Alberta. They're putting together a plan, spending $14 million to put together a plan for a pipeline, a bitumen pipeline from Alberta to BC's North Coast. And the Premier of Alberta has been talking this up and trying to garner support. BC, we've heard a lot of opposition. Premier David Eby saying he's opposed to lifting that ban on tanker traffic on the North Coast and says that this plan isn't really a plan without a private proponent. Sonia Furstenau, what do you want to hear from David Eby on this?
Yeah, I mean, David Eby is in a real pickle because on the one hand, he says he's opposed to a pipeline, which makes sense. We should not be building more fossil fuel infrastructure, and it certainly shouldn't be subsidized. But on the other hand, David Eby and his government have in fact been subsidizing the LNG industry to the tune of billions of dollars. They want to build transmission towers, which is another subsidy for the oil and gas industry, but also for the mining industry. And I agree with Gabriel. We need governments that are looking at the well-being of the people, how to serve that, and recognizing that we have failed to properly tax the wealthiest. The BC Greens are the only party that are opposed to fossil fuel subsidies, that are opposed to the kind of corporate welfare, and that had a plan in our 2024 election campaign and in our platform to increase taxes on the wealthiest and to be able to meet the needs of the people through a well-being framework. So I think we do need to look at exactly what Gabriel's talking about, and we need to reject the idea that fossil fuels are in any way an appropriate industry for government to be subsidizing at this time. So when Eby says he's opposed to a pipeline, I'd like to hear him say he's also opposed to public money going to the LNG industry, which has been funneled that way by the NDP for years now.
Allie Blades is also joining us, a BC Conservative Party strategist. What do you want to hear from the government, and what will the Conservative approach be on this?
I think what I want to hear from the government is that they're willing to be in the room to have this conversation that will end up impacting British Columbians, whether you're at the boardroom table or not. What I mean by this is Danielle Smith put forward this advisory council, and our premier was very hostile in his response, saying that this is all a mirage until private money truly comes to the table. But that what what Danielle Smith is trying to create is a path for that private investment to come in order for the private sector to build the economy, to then help the public sector in hopefully bringing down our deficit. But he's not willing to be at that table. But no matter if he's there or not, they're still going to talk about the cap emissions, and they're still going to talk about the tanker ban. And so wouldn't it be better if he was there? And really, what Danielle Smith has done here is set up an office that is going to advocate to the federal government on policy and on support. He should definitely be there and stop being so hostile to the conversation.
Katrina Chen, your former colleague, or Premier David Eby, what are your thoughts on how he has been handling this?
I definitely agree with the Premier's position on this, and I also agree with what Sonia has said about how protecting our environment is important to our economy. And we have already an example for my previous writing in Burnaby-Lougheed area. We have the Trans Mountain Pipeline, the tank farm, that's in the middle of a residential area that does not just threaten our environment, but also the safety of our own community, which could be a huge threat to our economy. That has created very little jobs here in BC. I think we definitely have to be clear about our position to protect our local economy and also protecting our environment and family safeties.
I have just a moment here to take a break. Our TV break is going to be coming up, so just a warning there for our TV audience. We're going to pause for a 2-minute break with you. We'll bring you back here in 2 minutes from now. This is BC Today, and I'm also joined by Mark Bernier, former BC United MLA. And so what are your thoughts? So where do you stand on how BC has responded to this proposal from Alberta, Mike?
Well, it's interesting because I'm looking out my window at my house right now, and I can see the border of Alberta, because I live at ground zero when it comes to the oil and gas development in British Columbia, where the gas comes from, where the pipelines go through. And I think one of the things that we need to remember is, I totally agree that we have to be worried and concerned about our environmental impact. But the caveat to that is that's why we have some of the strictest environmental regulations in the world when it comes to resource extraction here in British Columbia. And I think that's one of the issues that Premier Eby will be having to balance, realizing that there are tens and tens of thousands of jobs at stake here in British Columbia in the resource sector, whether it's mining, forestry, oil and gas. Those are good family supporting jobs that are at risk. And how do you balance that with good environmental policy so we can try to have the best of both worlds? Because we don't want to kid ourselves here. We have huge opportunities. Canada has huge opportunities. And if British Columbia closes the door or just turns a blind eye to the opportunities, then Alberta, Saskatchewan, and others will take on those opportunities, which means that's where the jobs will be. Danielle Smith, Premier Smith, as Allie said, is trying to open that door to get that private sector investment. We saw that here in British Columbia with LNG Canada, with the largest investment in Canadian history. And there's more opportunities if we do this right.
My guests, Katrina Chen, Mike Bernier, you just heard, Allie Blades and Sonia Furstenau. We've been discussing the return to the BC Legislature. I really enjoyed having all of you. I wish we had more time. I think we will probably talk again. There's so much to discuss, but I really appreciated having all of you for this panel. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mike Bernier, former BC United MLA for Peace River South. He ran as an independent in the last provincial election. Allie Blades is a BC Conservative political strategist. Katrina Chen, former BC NDP MLA for Burnaby-Lougheed. Sonia Furstenau, former MLA for Cowichan Valley and former BC Green Party leader. We will continue this conversation. BC Legislature is back for the fall sitting. It's busy. A lot of challenges before each of the parties. You heard some of that discussion in our last half hour. We're going to continue to take your calls as well, asking you what you think of the political landscape in BC right now. We heard about, the identity crises that the major parties are having. What do you think of that? And what do you want to see get done? Taking your calls, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, or just hit pound 690. Watching your emails at bctoday@cbc.ca. We'll check in on that rally at the BC Legislature as well. Right now, it is time for a CBC News Update at 12:30, and here's Robert Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. 3 men in their 20s have been charged with reckless discharge of a firearm in connection to an extortion-related shooting in Surrey. The case stems from a March shooting where shots were fired at a home, but no one was injured. Investigators believe the shooting to be linked to an existing extortion case, one of several plaguing Surrey's South Asian community. The BC General Employees Union is marching at the Legislature today as the strike of public service workers continues. Union President Paul Finch says the government's latest offer for workers wasn't good enough. A growing number of restaurants and bars, meanwhile, say they are running out of liquor because of the strike action. And officials have lifted the last evacuation order linked to a wildfire near Peachland. The regional district says the Zip Zone Adventure Park has been removed from its list of evacuations for the Monroe Lake blaze. At one point, the fire forced hundreds of people from their homes. And now the forecast on the north coast. Rain this afternoon with a high of 14. Highs up to 17 with a mix of sun and cloud in the Peace. In the central interior, including Prince George, mainly cloudy with a high of 15. Highs from 13 to 18 with a mix of sun and cloud in the Kootenays. In the southern interior, including Kelowna, clearing late this afternoon with a high of 17. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria, and the Fraser Valley, sunny this afternoon with highs up to 20 inland. That's your CBC News update from Vancouver.
Thank you very much, Rob. That's Rob Zimmerman in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. It is a busy day. Members of the BC General Employees Union are rallying in Victoria right now as they are continuing their strike action. More than 19,700 workers on the picket lines today. Those striking workers include those from BC Liquor and Cannabis Stores, the Liquor Distribution Branch, and the Commercial Vehicle Safety and Enforcement Weigh Scales. BCGEU President Paul Finch spoke to the early edition this morning.
In July, we broke off talks. Our members rejected the government's proposal, which is essentially the same proposal that they still have on the table. They've warmed it up with a 0.5% increase, and they rejected that by a 93% strike vote. We're a very democratic union, but we got called back to the table by government on September 29th. And of course, when we showed up, what we found was that 0.5% increase to the offer, which is really an insult. And an attempt, I would say a surreptitious attempt by government to drag out that information and to make it look like a negotiation. They were 3 hours late to the table, and then we asked if they had any power to kind of go back and forth. Of course, we understand that bargaining is about both sides kind of giving and taking here, and government wasn't willing to move off of that 0.5% increase. We were willing to move back and forth with them, and we did amend our offer, but clearly what we found is that they didn't show up to negotiate. They showed up to create the illusion of negotiations, probably to get other public sector unions further along or back to the table who've been standing in solidarity with the BCGEU.
Now, up next, we are going to take you live to Victoria at the rally that's taking place there. And striking BCGEU members are rallying at the BC Legislature this hour. The union calling on the province to return to the bargaining table. It has been escalating job action since the beginning of September, and 19,700 union members are on strike. The CBC's Kathryn Marlow is at the Legislature where the BCGEU is holding their rally. Hi, Kathryn.
Hi, Michelle.
Tell us about the scene around you right now.
Well, for people who are familiar with the BC Legislature, basically all of the main section of the lawn is full. So I haven't had a chance to do a full crowd estimate here, but I would say thousands of people are here. They gathered at Centennial Square, which is the plaza beside City Hall, and marched over here. It took them about 45 minutes, blocks and blocks and blocks of people marching, chanting, lots of flags, both for the BCGEU and the PEA, the two unions that are striking, but also other unions as well. CUPE, I saw flags for the Greater Victoria Teachers Association. Someone from the BC Federation of Labour is speaking right now. So support from all sorts of unions here today.
Yeah, and certainly timed it, right, to the start of the fall legislature. What is the message?
Certainly.
What is the message they're trying to send?
They want the government to come back to the table with what they say is a fair or a credible deal. So basically, Paul Finch, the head of the union, we heard him there before. He said to a colleague of mine on Friday, too, that negotiations were basically non-existent. The province, or the union, I should say, is asking for 8.25% over 2 years as a wage increase. The province came back to them last week with what they say was a 5% wage increase, and they say that that is not fair. There are a lot of chants here today, Michelle, about fair wages. And so the message here, while the MLAs are busy getting to work again and with escalating job action, is get back to the table to negotiate and bring us a better deal. They did announce today as well an extra 5,000 people starting job action for the union today.
Okay, so I see the crowds there behind you, Kathryn. Thank you very much for your reporting on this today.
You're welcome.
That's the CBC's Kathryn Marlow outside the BC Legislature, just on the lawn there. We are continuing to take your calls and your comments and questions about our top story today. What are your thoughts on the legislature going back and the unique challenges of each of the parties as they go back? And what is the job that you think they need to get done? You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, or just hit pound 690 on your cell phone. Watching your emails as well, bctoday@cbc.ca. For more on this, I'm joined now by pollster Mario Canseco. He's president of Research Co. Welcome back, Mario.
Great to be here with you, Michelle.
So this rally was timed for the BC Legislature. Your poll was timed for the return
It's been a day of perfect timing, yes.
Yes, I imagine not accidentally. But tell me about what you found in your polling.
Well, I think we were right earlier during the show to call it an identity crisis for the political parties. To see the Conservatives really not doing well during the summer, to see the level of support for John Rostad and his own numbers stagnant in the middle of a labor dispute with all the complaints about inflation is certainly not what we would have expected. And a very complex issue for the NDP also, usually very pro-union, trying to solve things quickly. There's certainly a very different landscape than the one that we used to have when it comes to labor disputes with an NDP government in place. We can go back to the late 1990s, and the level of support for the BC Liberals that was very, very high in 98, 99, 2000. We just don't see that with the BC Conservatives right now.
It was very interesting to hear from BC United, former BC United MLA. Of course, that was the Liberals before that on that identity crisis, right? And you talk about the NDP. Yes, that long-standing historic relationship with Labour. I mean, is that at risk now?
Well, it's definitely not where they want to be. I think there's been a significant shift in the way people react to the political parties that can be really seen on the age demographics. The 55 and over group used to be very heavily BC Liberal-minded, always voting for the centre-right parties. Now they're very happy with the way David Eby has been doing things. They don't see John Rostad as a premier in waiting. And it's really the fight over the other groups that is very tight. You do have younger people who are looking at the BC Conservatives as an option. But we also have to say it. There's a resurgent Green Party that is right now at 12%. This is 4 points higher than the result in the election. So that younger cohort is also looking at the environment more seriously now than they were 3 months ago.
And they have a younger party leader who, albeit, is not leading from within the House.
Well, that is one of the big questions of the legislature right now. What is going to happen with the new parties? Will there be another new party? Now it's so easy because you only need 2 people to form your own political party and have the status. How soon will Emily Lowen be in the legislature? So many things that are going to be defined in the next few weeks.
Of course, One BC is that other new party now with 2 members, and Dallas Brody. And I was listening to an interview with her saying she's fired up. And so it'll be interesting to see what that brings to what the debate session looks like and what question period will look like as well. Let's take some calls here asking people about what they think of the political landscape as we go back to the legislature. New sitting with 4 parties this time, 2 independents. Of course, Eleanor Storko just late last month was ejected from the BC Conservative caucus. So a lot happened over the summer break. It was a break, but very, very busy. Taking your calls again, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. Ellie is on the line in Vancouver. Hi, Ellie. You wanted to comment on the pipeline debate.
Yeah, that's correct. Thank you for taking my call. I just find Danielle Smith to be so incredibly cynical. It's clear to me that this is a stunt to provoke a fight with BC and anyone who even remotely cares about the environment. It's unbelievable to me how we've allowed our leaders to brand the very health and future of our planet as politics. We can't have any economic future when the country is constantly on fire. And like Sonia said earlier, ignoring climate change is incredibly expensive. Thank you.
Allie, thank you very much for the call. And I know your polling is kind of a moment in time, but how much is riding on how the province deals with this proposal from Alberta?
I think it's not really moving the needle that much. The level of concern for housing, for the economy and jobs, for healthcare is significantly higher. This was something that the Alberta government wanted to do, but if we go back to polling that I conducted prior to the Northern Gateway or the Kinder Morgan issues, you always saw Albertans very gung-ho on doing this and British Columbians more likely to be on the fence. So I don't think it's going to be particularly different now.
It's certainly catching headlines right now. And so we're certainly getting comments from each of the provinces, waiting comment from the Prime Minister on that. Really haven't heard from him on what he plans to do when it comes to the call from Alberta on that ban on tankers on the North Coast, but certainly a developing story we'll continue to watch for you. Thank you very much for the call, Allie. Lots of emails coming in as well. And we have this one email. No matter the party, we need to better allocate funds to healthcare. We spend too much on social programs that people don't want, where people don't want to work or live at home. But the healthcare system is so broken and not able to help those that so need it. Being a healthcare worker and a recent emergency room patient. Healthcare, certainly one of the big issues.
This is crucial, and it's one of the things where the NDP needs to connect better. The over 55 voter is more likely to be concerned about healthcare and not necessarily housing or the economy and jobs. It's a group that they need to hold on to, and if the Conservatives can connect with them better, then the race would be significantly closer than it is now.
Don is on the line now at Cowichan Valley. Hi, Don.
Oh, hey. Good afternoon, Nell. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure thing.
Many points to weigh in on, that's for sure. Been listening to your program, which you're doing a dynamite job. I guess the first thing is let's talk about the pipeline proposal from Premier Danielle Smith. Mm-hmm. We are in BC definitely thinking different than an Albertan, but I have to tell you, from a man that's lived in BC for 55 years, I'm going to support any government that will want to create income, revenues from Canadians' resources. That's a responsibility for all Canadians to be shared in, with the environment in check. And that's just a political decision to make sure that our leadership and people in power can create proper environmental procedures to properly bring out the resources for the benefit of all Canadians, let alone just the provinces, through taxation, through free enterprise. So I think I'm in support of Danielle Smith for sure. But I think our provincial premiers need to collaborate together as Canadians and quit being so, this is my team, your team. We're all Canadians. We have to make decisions that are in the best interests for all Canadians, not just the people that live on the coast or to think that we built a tank farm. That's going to be, now everything else is going to be wrong because someone made a mistake of maybe where it was placed. We have to be bigger people than maybe trying to replicate the same mistakes we have in the past, because we have so many resources in so many of the provinces. We have to work together to make them valuable. And as far as, but I don't want to be choosing political parties, but again, when we have also a premier saying that we have a trade war, the terminology that has been selected for that, personally, I think is terrible, because it's just a trade negotiation. They've been going on for years, and since time has begun, that countries trade, and if we have good negotiated nations and good negotiators, it's never a war. It's a war if we don't know how to use the assets we have to be able to generate the benefits to the Canadians.
Okay.
And as a Canadian, I'm going to say last thing here. I know you want to probably move on. As a Canadian, I want someone in power to negotiate for my interests that's going to benefit all Canada, not just to put a red hand up in someone's face and go, this is not right. That's just a poor negotiator, whatever party that may be.
Don, thank you very much for the call from the Cowichan Valley. And those negotiations continue today as Mark Carney heads to Washington to meet with Trump. You wanted to jump in, Mark?
It's an important issue, of course, different at the federal level as well. But when we ask Canadians at the federal level how they feel about things, Trump and whatever happens with Canada-U.S. relations is dropping steadily. It's now more likely to be about housing and jobs.
Emerson, let's go back to Victoria, and Emerson is on the line. Yeah, your thoughts on the BC legislature going back?
Hi, Michelle. I'm actually concerned about the disorganization and kind of internal conflict with the BC Conservatives. I'm traditionally like an NDP or a Green supporter, but I really want to see in like a Westminster parliamentary system a functional opposition, for lack of a better phrase. The BC Conservatives really don't seem to have a plan. They don't seem to have a cohesive party structure. I mean, you look at John Rustad, who had terrible voter turnout in his leadership review, just abysmal. I think something like less than 2,000 of the 8,000 members of his party turned out to vote, and he won, some percentage of that. But
70, I think.
Yeah, 70%. So you don't see, I think, a super united opposition that can really hold the government to account and demand better of it, right? Ultimately, I may not agree with the Conservatives on most issues, but I do think that we need to have a functional system, and I don't think the Conservatives are right now in a position to offer really cogent criticism of the government.
That was something we heard in our discussion in the last half hour as well. Emerson, thank you very much. The ability of this party to act as an opposition while it's dealing with the internal struggles.
Well, it's an important point. We were talking a couple of days after the last election, just how tenuous everything was because it was so close. They lost 4 members. Now it's no longer as tenuous.
Emerson, thank you very much. Good to hear from you in Victoria. Really interesting point there. And we'll watch, right? We'll watch to see over the course of this session how that shapes up, that dynamic between the opposition and the governing party. I'll put out the numbers once again. We're asking you, as politicians go back to Victoria for the legislative session this fall, what are your thoughts on each of the parties, how they're doing, the challenges in front of them, and what is the job that you think they need to get done? Our numbers again, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. Our email, bctoday@cbc.ca. And lots of comments on our TikTok as well. So thank you very much for joining us there. C. Symington writes, this pipeline has no economic benefit to British Columbia. It has no private sector backing or any investment beyond taxpayer money. Islander writes, working class would be better off without government. They create, build, and trade just fine. Well, thank you very much. Okay. And 3 Canadian brownies. These names always give me, they're a bit of a hoot. And 3 Canadian brownies writes, as a nurse, yes, stop taking money from us and tax the wealthy people and corporations. Thank you so much for all of your emails. Appreciate it very much. Interesting points there. Robert is next now on the phones from Brentwood Bay. Hi, Robert.
Oh, good afternoon. Yes, I'm calling again about the pipeline. I think this project is totally, it should be totally rejected. The BC coastline is priceless to us. We're in a high earthquake zone. We're expecting a 9 or 9.5 from the megathrust, which historically we know occurs every 300, 400 years, or over 300 years right now. But also, I think David Eby should change his approach because he's implying that if she gets a corporate backer, then he's okay to deal. He needs to say that we don't care if it comes out of our purse or from a corporate slush fund in Alberta. No funding will justify this project ramming through British Columbia.
So what do you want to hear from David Eby then?
Well, just that it doesn't matter who's backing it. If she finds a corporate backer, it doesn't matter. This project stands to destroy the BC coastline if it goes through. I'd like to see the diluted bitumen stopped altogether going through our waters, but that issue's already been fried years ago. But if they try to ram this project through, they're going to have a war with every environmentalist in British Columbia. So if our corporate backers are afraid of backing it because controversy and whatnot, they haven't seen anything yet.
Okay. Robert, thank you so much for the call from Brentwood Bay. So I know you were talking about the level of attention people are paying to resource and environment issues as well, but it does sound like, I mean, we have the opposition from BC, right? We have the Coastal First Nations standing against it, this pipeline. So in terms of what it may mean for this project moving forward, we saw what happened with Northern Gateway. I guess I'm wondering, you can't see into the future, but
no.
What kinds of challenges might it have, even if she gets that private backing?
Even if it happens, but it's complicated. I don't think the federal government would go into the business of purchasing a second pipeline in British Columbia. That's going to be very complicated for Mark Carney to explain. But it's also about the fact that the supposed backer financially might not even be reached. So it's a little bit of an easier way for the BC government to talk about this instead of saying no directly. Now, mind you, there were no discussions between the two governments before Danielle Smith said what she wanted to do.
I want to ask you about that relationship between BC and Alberta. I mean, what impact might this have?
Well, it's always been a little bit like that. I mean, I go back to moments when Alison Redford and Christy Clark did not agree with each other. And you would assume because they were both center-right politicians, things would work out just fine. This is going to be significantly different because of the way in which they're looking at things. And it's also partly a wedge issue. Because they're undergoing this discussion related to whether they want to secede from the country. So 6 months from now, we'll see if this still has legs.
Our numbers, again, we have about 6 minutes left in the program. If you want to weigh in on BC politics, what do you want to comment on? 4 parties now at the legislature as they begin their fall sitting. That starts today. We'll bring you some of that coverage as well on what takes place this afternoon. They come back in about 8 minutes from their break. Let us know what you think are the biggest challenges, 1:30, pardon me, and what is the job that you think they need to get done. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, or just hit pound 690 on your phone. Our email as well, bctoday@cbc.ca. And MJ writes, as I listen to Sonia Furstenau and Mike Bernier talk about taxing the rich, it reminds me that I've heard on your show, it was tax the rich more than other provinces then the rich, will just leave BC. And this doesn't seem to get discussed much. MJ, thank you very much. We have talked about people having left British Columbia, that interprovincial migration that's been happening as well, and the impact on BC. Okay, well, again, our numbers, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. The deficit, Mario.
Yes.
Okay, so how big of a problem is that going to be for the NDP?
It's not as bad as it was in the past. I think part of what we've seen is, well, not the deficit. The deficit is huge, but as far as it being a significant political issue, the over 55 voter is more likely to be trusting the NDP with this. And it would have been easier for the BC Conservatives to criticize this if they hadn't pitched that budget deficit that was higher than what the NDP was talking about back in 2024. It's a problem, particularly because of services, and you have a labor dispute as well, so that makes things more complicated. But to me, the fact that when you ask people, who do you think would be better managing the finances of this province? John Rostad trails David Eby badly. We never saw that with Christy Clark or with Gordon Campbell against Adrian Diggs or Carol James.
Mina writes says, show us the budget. As a housewife, I know what's needed and what is not a necessity. So there you go. Thank you very much for that call. Jim at Spence's Bridge. Hi, welcome. And your thoughts on what the provincial government needs to get done in this sitting?
Well, I think the government should be looking at resetting the forest industry policies. I believe that only 40% of British Columbia should have logging. The rest of the 60% should be preserved for watershed protection, flood protection, and tourism purposes. I can remember when I came into BC in the 1960s, there used to be massive trees all along the Trans-Canada Highway and elsewhere. They're all gone now. And that's a lost tourism opportunity, along with a lost opportunity for mushroom pickers as well. I think there should be a democratic process that allows British Columbians to reset the forestry practices in this province in order to better protect the province. And we don't need to export every log out of this country or out of this province raw or highly unprocessed. There needs to be value added to all the wood in this province before it's exported. Exporting raw logs is a raw deal for British Columbians as the wealth is created abroad.
Jim, thank you very much. Certainly a critical time for the forest industry in BC. And again, dealing with tariffs from the United States. Let's take one last call here from Gerald at Lake Cowichan. Hi, Gerald.
Hi, how are you doing?
Very well. And you wanted to comment on the pipeline proposal from Alberta.
Yes, I'd just like to point out something. 80% of that pipeline is going to run through BC. It's going to hit BC coastal terminals in some of the worst weather conditions on the planet in the winter. Number two is if that pipeline breaks, where's Alberta going to be with the cleanup process? How is it going to affect the coast? It's going to wreck the coast. Go up and ask the people in Valdez, Alaska, or the people in the Gulf of Mexico how they felt about the BP oil spill and the oil spill on the Valdez, on the tanker Valdez. They're still cleaning up. The people on Missoula are still cleaning up from the oil spill on the river. It is going to cost you more to clean up than any money these guys are boasting about making. And Alberta will not be there. 700 oil wells had to be capped and cleaned up in Alberta. Who paid for that? Not Albertans. It was the Canadian taxpayer, not the companies who made the mess, Canadian taxpayers. And that's what's going to happen.
Okay. Gerald.
So Daniel Smith, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I have less than a minute left, so I just was going to jump in. Thank you very much for your call, and your concerns about a spill, certainly echoed by the Haisla chief, the Coastal First Nations, in terms of their concerns about that proposed pipeline. This email, though, from Robin, who writes, my 2 cents on the situation. I think what Premier Danielle Smith has made the right move with trying to get a pipeline built from Alberta to BC. David Eby is getting in the way and saying no to everything. So another view there on the email. Gerald, thank you very much for the call from Lake Cowichan, and always good to have you, Mario. Thank you.
My pleasure, Michelle, anytime.
Mario Canseco, president of ResearchGo. Thanks for your emails, bctoday@cbc.ca.